rightmem.co.uk video on a topic that I see a lot in forums that I visit, which is, can I get a networking job with a CCNA, or am I better off getting a degree? Before we get into all that though, I'd like to just give you a bit of background about myself so that you feel that you can trust the information that I'm giving you. So without further ado, I've been in IT for 13 years. I worked for a couple of different companies in that time, utilities and retail. I've been in a network role for around 7 of those years. I got my first certification in networking in around 2005. That was the Network Plus. And then I got the CCNA, and I'm currently a CCMP holder. That's the CCMP route and switch track. And I'm now a network engineer for a large global retailer. So the question we pose at the top of this video is, should I get a CCNA or should I get a degree instead? Now, I see multiple different versions of this question. Some that just say, can I get a job with a CCNA, or can I get a networking job with a computer science degree? And the question is, it completely depends on your area and the companies in your area. If you're in a big city, for example, you're much more likely to find that there's lots of roles available, and you may be able to pick up a job with just a CCNA or just a computer science degree. But that job isn't necessarily going to be a computer networking job. It's probably more likely to get you into a help desk role. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down this video into several separate scenarios so that people at different stages in their career can understand what their next step should be, in my opinion. Okay, so in my first scenario, which I'm going to call the unsure newbie, the unsure newbie doesn't have a job in IT, doesn't hold any network certifications at all, and doesn't have a relevant degree in IT either, so a computer science degree or another like computer networking degree if your university offers such a thing. So there's 2 types of people that I find when I've been reading the forums that kind of ask this question. There's the newbie that's always been messing around with computers since they were kids. It's kind of like, I would call them like an advanced newbie. And then there's the beginner newbie, which has not really ever had an interest in computing. And they just want to maybe just earn a fair bit of money, and they've heard IT is the place to do that, which is not always the case. But they may be right, they may be wrong, depends on their area. So they're asking whether the CCNA is for them, usually. The CCNA exam itself doesn't have any prerequisites, so you can be a complete beginner and take the CCNA. But it depends on your comfort level with things like subnetting, IP addresses, routing protocols, things like that. You'll learn all that stuff on the course, but if that kind of thing strikes fear into your heart, then maybe you're better off starting a little step backwards. So there's several courses by CompTIA that you may find useful just for general computing, like the A+ exam. And the CompTIA Network Plus exam as well. They give you just a bit more of a broader overall than the CCNA will do. It's a little bit easier to get, and it gives you a bit of a leg up towards the CCNA as well. Kind of like a foundation course, if you will. So yeah, for the other type of person, the more advanced newbie, go for it. Go for your CCNA. It may not get you the job straight away that you want, but it depends on your goals. If your goal is to just get into IT, then you'll be able to find a help desk job. I mean, I can't imagine that many kind of hiring managers would turn away someone that's got that CCNA for a help desk role, because it is very rare. I mean, I worked on a help desk for several years at the start of my career, and I've worked with help desks since. And essentially no one has networking knowledge in those careers. It just tends to be a big black hole in the help desk team. So I would definitely give it a go. It will really help you get that initial help desk job, but it won't necessarily help you get a networking job straight away. You need the experience in the help desk before you can go ahead and start applying for those higher paying network specialist roles. My second scenario is the graduate. So the graduate is typically someone that's come out of university with a degree in computer science, but they don't have any other industry certifications or any relevant experience in the field. Very similar to the first scenario in that you're not going to get a job as a networking engineer with just a degree. You need that experience, you need those certifications. They're all important in a networking role. Again, you should aim for a help desk role. You'll pick one up fairly easily with a computer science degree. And you know, you've definitely got the capability to learn quickly. So why not take the CCNA while you're on the job? You know, you can perhaps speak to your manager in your help desk role, and maybe they'll pay for your CCNA. Maybe they'll give you time to study, and if they do, great, because you'll be helping yourself, you know, get a foot on that first rung on that network path that you want to be part of. My third scenario is a little bit rarer, and that is where someone has lots of certifications, or maybe just a certification, but they've had no experience whatsoever in IT. So this one can be tricky. It depends how far you've gone up the ladder of certifications. So perhaps you've just grabbed your CCNA and you're happy you've passed and you're looking for your job. That really is kind of the ideal scenario in this, like the sub scenario of this scenario. You've not gone too far, so you've taken an entry level certification and you're looking for an entry level job. You may think that you're in like a chicken and the egg type position, where you're kind of being told that you don't have the experience, but then no one will give you a job to give you the experience. And the fact of the matter is you're probably aiming at jobs that are slightly above your pay grade at the moment. Again, aim for lower level jobs and work your way up. It's much easier to do this, and you don't have to stay at that job forever. You could stay there for a couple of years and get the experience, and then you'll find that moving on afterwards will be such an easier experience in the long run. So it's not really that difficult to do. A lot of people complain that they're in that classic chicken and the egg position, but it's really not that hard to get around. You just have to be willing to not be paid as much for a couple of years and play the long game. There are certain people that have gone further than that, and they've gone and got CCMPs. This can be a bit more tricky because they haven't had the relevant experience in the industry, and they seem overqualified. So even when applying for help desk roles, the hiring manager may look at a CCMP, they may look at the CCMP's typical salary, and they think this guy isn't going to want the job. I think if you're finding that you're getting a lot of rejection even from lower level jobs, then I would possibly remove that CCMP off your CV, off your resume, because otherwise you may just not get the chance, you may not get the foot in the door. Perhaps it would be better to just mention it in an interview. So once you've had a chance to impress them, mention it there and see how that goes. But really, CCMP, I wouldn't recommend taking that for a CCNA level candidate at the moment. To explain that a bit more, I wouldn't recommend, if you're a CCNA at the moment that doesn't have a job, I wouldn't recommend that you go and get your CCMP at that moment in time. It's probably not going to do you any favours. Now the next scenario is the worker. So your CCNA that you've got has helped you kind of set yourself apart from the other candidates, and you've landed the help desk role that you wanted, and you're looking for a way to move up. So perhaps you've been in the job a couple of years, you've learnt some of the wider like soft skills and some of the great kind of infrastructure pieces that will really help you further on down the line. So you may have dealt with servers, cloud, you could have done some scripting or something like that. But you've been around users, you've seen general issues, and you understand the kind of programs, applications that are used inside companies. And that's all important experience, it really is. You've just got to kind of do that for a couple of years, and then you can start thinking about making your next move, perhaps to a systems admin role, a senior role, or maybe even you want to try for a pure network engineering role at this point. So the first thing I would do is, if your company's large enough to have an internal networking team, I would start to kind of ingratiate myself with those guys a little bit. You know, you might want to do this from the very first day you're there. You know, if you've got that CCNA, you've probably got knowledge that the other guys in your team do not have. You know, the networking skill set is quite different from a lot of the other ways that people get into IT. So you may find that if you start solving some of the network issues, people will pass those network issues to you naturally. You may find that if you shout enough about it to the networking team, that, you know, you're taking all this stuff off their hands, and they may kind of take you under their wing a little bit. And if they do that, then the next time a junior networking role comes up, perhaps you'll be top of the pile. Unfortunately for me, this was never the case. I had to move jobs to find a networking role that was suitable for my goals. And, you know, it's perfectly fine to do that, and the infrastructure that you've learned on the way will also help you, you know, find a job at another company. My final scenario is the wannabe specialist. Now, this is a role I can relate to, a scenario I can relate to quite a lot. I know that for myself, I wanted to get out of a generalist role that I was in. I was a sysadmin for 7 years. And although it was a great job, I just didn't really enjoy some of the aspects of the infrastructure. So I didn't particularly enjoy dealing with storage, for example. I was pretty fed up of increasing the size of LUNs to keep Microsoft Exchange working, for example. That was a big bugbear of mine. And I much preferred to be dealing with the networking side, which I did have exposure to. I was the only person, other than the head of IT, that had any kind of networking knowledge. And that kind of helped me do things like replace core switches and, you know, do design bits and pieces that really helped me kind of get the experience that I needed to feel confident to do the CCMP. And that's something I really would recommend. I would recommend while you're in your first job that you set aside some time to get at least one of the exams for the CCMP under your belt. If you can do that, then the chances are that if you put that on your CV, that you're, you know, one of 2 exams into your CCMP, you'll get a lot more interest than you would have done if you just got a CCNA on there when looking for a pure networking role. So yeah, that's definitely something I would recommend. And perhaps when you're interviewing for your specialist role in networking, you can ask whether there's scope for the company to help you out with paying for the second exam. And then, you know, you've kind of realized whether that company is invested in you and it is happy to kind of help you along that path that you're wanting to go down. So the next thing that you should do is once you've got one of your exams for your CCMP under your belt, would be to just once you're in that role, just completely try to understand that environment. So look for the holes in your knowledge. I know that when I first came to my networking specialist role, I didn't know anything about BGP really, other than what I'd learned in the CCMP route that I'd already done. It really does help your knowledge, because there'll be bits of configuration that you see and you think, oh, I wonder what that does. And you end up going down a bit of a rabbit hole of, you know, why next top self is, you know, does what it does, or perhaps like what the standard timers are for BGP, or it could be anything, couldn't it? You know, you build that knowledge around the subject that you're not too familiar with, because you have to do your role. So you'll learn a lot like that, and if you can do the final exams of the CCMP while you're there, you'll end up CCMP qualified. And if you don't, you know, if you want to move on somewhere else, perhaps there's a higher paying role nearby that you want to take instead, then you've got the CCMP and the knowledge from your previous year's experience to take that role with much more confidence. And finally, one last thing I'd like to mention is that there aren't just Cisco certifications out there. You may find that in your area, Juniper or Palo Alto or Checkpoint or, I don't know, Meraki or something like that is big, and everyone wants a piece of someone that has those skills. There's certainly certifications in most of those technologies that you can go out there and get that will really kind of set you apart from other candidates. Now that's something even myself I haven't done yet. I know that Juniper certifications is somewhere that I would like to go. I noticed that there are a lot of jobs that require Juniper where I am, and it also would help me in my normal role to get that certification, as even though I use Juniper on a fairly regular basis, I still don't feel as comfortable with it as perhaps I do with a Cisco router, because I just don't have as much experience with it. So, you know, that is an important thing to kind of look into, see what's in your area and see if you can match those skills a bit better. Another thing would be to make sure that you lab stuff. So if you can get hold of it, it's a free download, GNS3, you'll be able to, you know, get different vendors' routers. So for Juniper, for example, you can download the VSRX or VMX routers from their website for free for an evaluation period. I think it's 90 days or 60 days, something like that, where you can just play around with their kit, and perhaps it will really help you with your certifications as well. And I know that it really helped me when I was doing my CCMP, to lab up all the different scenarios and play with all the different technologies, especially in the root exam, because it just gives you the experience that perhaps you can't mess around with, you know, the routers on your production environment at work, but you can in GNS3. Finally, if you enjoyed this video, which I hopefully you did and you found it useful, then you can check out other articles that I've written. Some of them can help with the CCNA. I've got some Juniper articles and some CCMP and higher level stuff on my blog, which is writemem.co.uk. And I also have a YouTube channel, which is WriteMem TV. So I hope you found this video useful, and it'd be great to see you again.